Proponents of lane splitting claim not only is it safe, but that by doing so, rear-end collisions are reduced, traffic congestion is decreased, that lane splitting has benefits of both an environmental and mechanical nature, and it enhances rider visibility and optionality. But even if it were legal in my state tomorrow, I wouldn't do it. And in this video, I'm going to talk about why. Right off the bat, let me say I am not for banning lane splitting. In fact, the younger me probably would be on board with the whole thing. I agree with the studies and the findings in regard to the benefits of lane splitting. It is the implementation or lack thereof that I am talking about, and especially here in the United States. The first time I saw lane splitting in its purest form was on a trip to Bangkok, Thailand in the early 90s. And when I say lane splitting, I'm not talking about individual motorcycles or small packs of riders. I'm talking about hordes of riders, waves of them, like a sea flooding through the streets, pouring through slow-moving or stopped cars like a torrent with fluid perfection. A street with 4 marked lanes could have as many as 15 riders abreast at the front. Many of these motorcyclists were acting as taxis and had women passengers sitting side saddle while this whole thing was going on. It was truly a sight I will never forget. It was like a dance. And I say it was a dance because the amazing part wasn't just that the riders and the passengers were doing it. It was how the rest of the vehicles, traffic, and pedestrians around coordinated with them. Over there, everyone understands the dance. Cars naturally leave space, and the motorcycles would move through them carefully. People weren't shocked when it happened because it's part of the traffic culture there. Everyone is in on it. Drivers, riders, pedestrians, everyone. While I was amazed at what I was seeing, I knew then and there I was likely to never see that duplicated at home. Attempted maybe, but never duplicated. I remember when my dad took us to see the 1970s film Patton. Now, some of you older riders who saw it probably remember the opening speech of the general standing there in front of that gigantic American flag. He talked about the competitive nature of the American spirit and how as kids in school we wanted to be the best, be first and always win and never accept a loss. As a kid, that speech rang so true for me, and I've never forgotten it. Growing up, it seemed like every time the bell rang to leave for class, for recess, or go to lunch, that was a point of contention. To be first in line and claim, "Me first," or tell someone to get behind. It's just human nature. But to have a competitive nature as a kid or on a sports field is one thing. But when someone brings that mentality into their driving, it's a whole other problem. A child in an adult's body playing "me first" in a 4,000-pound vehicle becomes something that no law or regulation can account for. Too many drivers become territorial and they take their lane literally, and the space in front, behind, and around them becomes their space. Proximity matters here. Someone passing them feels strangely personal to some drivers. It's fascinating because logically, another vehicle moving ahead of you changes almost nothing, but emotionally for some people, it feels like they're losing or being disrespected. You see it every day. You start to pass someone, suddenly they speed up. Someone merges at the last second. Other drivers refuse to let them in. Someone signals for a lane change and the gap magically disappears. Driving often becomes a competition. Nobody admits they're playing. And this is a game we riders will always lose. When a motorcyclist is splitting lanes correctly, legally, and safely, the research says you're reducing congestion, avoiding possible rear-end collisions, and more. But a growing number of drivers don't see that. They see someone cheating, someone breaking in front of them. They think, why should they get to skip the line? This is the mindset that concerns me. It's not every driver, it's not even most drivers, but there are just enough of them to keep me from betting my life on it. As with most things involving motorcycles, just because it's legal doesn't make it safe. There have been numerous lessons that I look back on now that I am so glad someone taught me, or that I picked up on. There was my brother's #1 rule, to ride like you're invisible, which is probably the best piece of advice any rider could ever get. There was my first street crash where this rule was played out in real time and taught me that ride like you're invisible isn't just a euphemism. But then there is the one thing that I implemented on my own years ago, and that is to never trust a green light. And in this case, green light is a euphemism. It's a code word for any circumstance in which we as riders have the right of way. Any intersection, any turn, any lane change, and certainly any green light. Anything. Just because you have the lawful right does not mean you are safe to proceed. This is the hardest lesson for some riders to learn. All riders have been in or seen this play out in their riding career. Some of us multiples of 10 or even hundreds of times. At some point in our riding, we begin to realize that staying safe requires more than abiding by the rules and hoping everyone else does too. Because sooner or later, you're going to come across someone who isn't abiding by the rules at precisely the time you need them to. And no law, regulation, or reconciliation can ever undo the consequences. That's the same philosophy I apply to splitting. Could I point to studies showing reduced rear-end crashes? Absolutely. Could I explain why filtering makes engineering sense? Yep. I could also argue that riding a wheelie everywhere you go reduces front tire and suspension wear, decreases wind and head buffeting, increases your vertical profile, thus making you more visible and safer, and takes up less space on the road. You know, that optionality thing. But like lane splitting, none of those benefits address the gigantic elephant in the room. The coordination, skill, and cooperation of not just the rider, but everyone on the road is required. None of those statistics protect anyone from the distracted driver scrolling through TikTok, let alone the adult child playing me first. Like a lot of riders, I grew up idolizing guys on fast motorcycles, the risk takers like Evel Knievel. The road warrior was just a strong lure. But as I got older, I began to see the reality of riding and the consequences of mistakes that caused wrecks and spills. I began to see that motorcycling on the street, among other drivers, means we have to not only account for our mistakes, but the mistakes and carelessness of other drivers. Because laws, regulations, and rules, even though they're designed to keep everyone safe, are not always followed. Either we can throw our hands up and say, yeah, it's risky, but what are you going to do? Or we can take a perspective of risk assessment and management in a whole new way. One that involves pushing the boundaries of our responsibility out far enough that it covers the mistakes of others as well. Sooner or later, we all find out that becoming a better rider isn't about proving what you can do. It's about deciding what you need not to do to survive, because following the rules is not enough. You have to go to the next level. It's about anticipation and predictions based off past experiences. To me, a good rider doesn't simply ask, can I do this? They ask, is this worth doing and can it be done safely? When it comes to lane splitting, for me, the answer is no. Of the 4 universally acknowledged benefits I mentioned in the beginning of this video, all were things I have strove for the better part of the last 20 years to implement or improve upon. Rear-end collisions is said to decrease with lane splitting, but they also decrease when a rider becomes aware of their surroundings and uses lane position and constant awareness. To me, if I get rear-ended on a motorcycle, technically it's their fault, but I'm not doing my job. The other benefits are primarily focused on the environment in which lane splitting becomes most beneficial to the motorcyclist, and that is heavy congestion. Here again, experiences have taught me to simply avoid these at all costs, and I do. The final ruling in my decision making is that proximity, or rather distance, is at the apex of this process. On a motorcycle, distance is time and time is life. The closer you are to other vehicles, the higher the risk environment. Lane splitting may as well be called lane invasion for most drivers because that is how they see it. Not me, them. I know this now. I've seen it, and no law on the book is going to change that. The green light rule applies here. In my estimation, the close proximity, the reduced time, and the inability to predict every driver's behavior in milliseconds make lane splitting, for me, a no-go. Down the road, maybe the laws will change. Maybe public awareness will improve over time. Maybe 20 years from now, lane splitting will become something that is accepted here as it is in the other parts of the world. So that's where I stand on lane splitting here in the US, which is where I have spent over 50 years on the roads. And while I've seen lane splitting done right, my guess is the me first mentality is not just here in the US, but it's everywhere else. Do you notice this type of driver in your part of the world? Put a comment down below and let me know what you think about lane splitting. Would you do it? Or do you do it and see the same thing I am seeing? Anyway, that's all I have for this video. I want to thank you guys for watching. Thank you for subscribing and commenting. And if you haven't subscribed and you like this kind of content, think about hitting that button down there. And we'll see you guys in the next video. Ride safe. Take care. Bye.